So, Joe, this is not our first pricing soundbite episode. We've actually had, I think, quite a few on pricing at this point of just us talking about it, especially when we're talking about the solopreneur success cycle. Um, and I think one of the things we haven't covered is sometimes solopreneurs don't price their services correctly because maybe they lack confidence, or maybe that's the perception of why they undersell and maybe not even realize it. But I think a big reason we're starting to really hone in on our audience. We're talking to people that have like left corporate, had the experience, and they're leaving corporate to go out on their own. And I think people still price like they're an employee. They price their time instead of pricing outcomes like a real business owner. Would you agree with that?
Well, I totally 100% agree with that. When you think about what businesses do, I remember talking to a guy years ago, and he owned a law firm, and I was just kind of curious with chat. He just kind of became a friend, and I said, "Well, how do you mark up your people? You got these lawyers working for you. How do you mark up the time? What you're paying them versus what you're charging?" And he gave me a number like 3x. And I was like, wow. But when you look at a law firm, there's a lot of expenses. It wasn't crazy, but it was like I was surprised at first. And I think a lot of people coming out of corporate, the idea of taking what they were making per hour and multiplying it times three or more is kind of just beyond what they can imagine doing.
Yeah.
And you know,
Well, I feel like in corporate, you're rewarded for like time spent and responsiveness on things and the amount of effort you put in and how visible that effort is and making sure you're standing out. And then so when they become a solopreneur, it's like, is this hourly rate fair for my experience? Instead, what they should be thinking is the value for the problem that they're solving. Um, because otherwise, you just get into these time based traps that you're just so used to being in the corporate ladder where there's salary limits or performance reviews and all of that. But now, as a business owner, you really have to wear a different cap.
it all comes down to one key aspect that you need to think about when you're deciding what your service or product is worth. And to me, the word is transformation. What is the transformation that the customer or client is going to see before and after? And what is that worth to them? And if it's worth X and you charge, 50% of X or whatever, 75% of X, you're a great deal. And that number may be really large. Now, when you're getting started, you're probably going to go a little easier onto this, not just walk out and sell your services for $1,000 an hour. But that kind of thinking will free you to be more comfortable with pricing that's significantly better for your bank account.
And I think some people surprise themselves, like if they provide that value and people are like, wow, that's so helpful. That's so great. And you're like, it took me 10 seconds because that's just what you're like, it's just something that you know how to do. I'm going to ask you to tell this story in a second, and it took you 10 seconds, but really it's 10 years of experience that's coming on those 10 seconds. So Joe, please tell the hammer story because it's my favorite story.
I'm assuming this is the story of the guy with the hammer.
Yes.
Okay, it's an allegory or whatever you want to call it, but the story is this guy. There's a ship engine or something, and it's a big giant engine, and it's not working, and nobody can fix it. And this guy is the world expert, says I can fix it, and he comes in. It's going to cost $10,000 for him to fix this engine, and they say, okay, that's definitely worth it. Go do it. And he walks in with this little hammer, and he taps on one spot on the engine, and then he goes to another spot, taps there, and taps at a third place, and boom, the engine's working. And he said, well, that's $10,000. And they said, that was just 30 seconds. You didn't do anything. He goes, you're not paying me for the time I spent tapping. You're paying me for the time it took me to learn where to tap.
Yes.
And that is that's really what it's about. It's like, you might know how to do something that you can do it, pretty easily, but there's probably 10,000 hours of experience underlying that.
And I mean, you need to refer not what should I charge per hour, but what is the cost of the problem continuing for the client, like if they keep experiencing it. And the other thing is, I tell you all the time, like if I'm in a room full of marketers, like I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much I need to learn. I'm nervous. There's so many people that are better at this than I am. But if I'm in a room without marketers and people that need marketing help, I am the smartest person alive. Like if you get to your target audience, what you provide is so incredibly valuable. You just don't see it sometimes because you're surrounded by it and by others in your field.
Can I take a little tangent for a second?
Sure.
Because I think what you said at the beginning of um, that analysis was important too. That when you're in a room full of marketers, you feel like you know all these, you find these things people are better at than you. But we have an ability to look at the world and see, oh, this person's better than me at this, and this person's better than me at this, and we build this composite that makes us feel like, wow, I'm really lacking. But if you compare yourself to one person, they might be a genius at X and you're a genius at Y. But if you go around finding the geniuses all around you, you'll start feeling pretty bad if you don't kind of step back and go, hey, wait a minute. So, because that's another thing that people can do. They can say, well, I'm not the greatest marketer in the world, or I'm not the greatest this in the world, and so I really shouldn't be charging that much money. But in the reality, you've got your thing that you're great at. I just look at people like my wife is, she'll talk about the fact that she's not really good at math, but she's a child therapist. She goes in and she takes a little, she's a child whisperer. She just gets with a little kid and boom, there's a connection instantly. And it's probably, there's probably not that many people in the world that have that skill at her level. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But so she's not good at math. So what? She's a genius at that. And that's why I think we all need to keep that in mind, because that's another thing I think that holds us back from feeling our worth and being confident in pricing properly.
Well, it's so funny because another friend of mine, in terms of pricing properly, he's in sales, and something he tells people all the time is that a lot of times people are afraid of the no. And so what they're saying is they're really, what they're afraid of the no, they're protecting the conversation, but not the business. So they don't want that letdown of like, oh no, they said no, but they don't have the business in mind. They have that conversation in mind where it's scary to get the no, but you have to keep your entire business in mind. And I thought that was really, I've never heard that before.
I think it's great, but it leads to something we don't want to talk about today, which is knowing how to sell, because that no is not really no. It's basically an objection that you can then say, why do you say that? Why do you feel it's too expensive? And you can then walk through, we won't talk about it today, but that is such an important thing. And another thing that people should really consider is that a lot of people out there aren't comfortable with the low price leader. I'm one of those people. I don't look for the lowest price. I always look for that price that seems like somebody's got something valuable, right? I know there are folks out there that see, there's everybody else is charging $100 and this guy's charging 10. They're like, great. They're usually sorry because it's not good, but they do it anyway. But, a lot of people will perceive you as more valuable if you price yourself higher, because it looks like you're going to have the capacity to deliver a good solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, those are just our 2 cents today. I think moral of the story is that if you're leaving corporate or thinking about it, one of the hardest things to do is just change your mindset and your mental model around all this stuff, because corporate does not prepare you for pricing strategies as a solopreneur. So if you want to build that sustainable business, it's not necessarily if you work the hardest, it's just you need to learn how to price the outcome, not the input that you get.
I just want to toss out a resource that people should consider using, and it's Alex Hormozi's $100 million offers. It's a book, but he gets you thinking about things like, I have some notes here because I didn't want to blow it. Dream outcome, right? What is the dream outcome that your client has, right? If you can say, look at that and say, what is the dream for them? Write that down. Then say all the potential problems that the customer will see in achieving that problem, either things that they just think your solution won't work for them, or that just they won't be able to do it. List those and then develop solutions that address those fears, that bring the dream outcome and address the fears. Now, when you think about presenting that product and you think about how, you've thought about the customer's perspective, it's a lot easier to price it higher, because you've just generated so much value in that transformation we talked about, from things are not good now and afterwards things are going to be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. Well, listeners, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. You guys, Joe and I were asking for some reviews and we've been getting them, and it's awesome. And we so appreciate it, because
Thank you.
The more reviews we get, the more solopreneurs we can reach. And that is our ultimate goal. Truly, we just love helping one-person business owners. So continue to do that. and subscribe on your favorite podcast channel, including YouTube, and share this episode with a friend because it's important. And we'll see you next time on The Aspiring Solopreneur.